The MSP Platform Space is heating up again. We'll talk about this topic and more on today's MSP Zone.
You're entering the MSP Zone, a podcast for the managed services community, covering news, analysis, and interviews from around the globe. Elevate your MSP game by staying in the MSP Zone. And now, your host, Charles Weaver.
We've got the legacy Big Four MSP platform companies, and we've got a pretty big update on what I would say is now definitively a trend on some new startups that are taking square aim on those Big Four MSP platform companies, and that's our topic for today. And this is not really new. We've heard grumblings in the past, maybe the last several months, and it's not like there hasn't been any activity within the MSP platform community. There have been startups over the last several years, but not a super ton. But today we're starting to see movement and investment. And that is a very big thing. And that's why I think it's important for us to talk about, because it's important for you as new MSPs, mature MSPs, wherever you might be in your MSP practice, maturity model. You need to be aware of it and be aware of what your options are specifically. So we're going to talk about kind of three major trends or interesting concepts that I'm seeing within the MSP platform space. And before we get into it, you may be asking, what do you mean when you say the MSP platform space? Well, the traditional, and these used to be bifurcated. These used to be separate tools. 20 years ago, you'd had RMM vendors, you had ticketing vendors, and they were very different, right? Today, you don't have an RMM vendor without them also having a ticketing system, and vice versa, right? They're all fused together. So you see RMM and ticketing almost always coming together as a contiguous platform, right? So you've got the Big Four. Who are they? Well, they're Datto, they are ConnectWise, they are Kaseya, and they are Enable / the old SolarWinds team, but they're now coming back and rebranded as Enable. And so you've got these four companies who have not just RMM, not just ticketing, but they've got backup, they've got security, they've got a really good array of tools and technologies that MSPs would find useful, both for internal use as well as for resale or for bundling along with their managed services downstream to their customers. And that's where we've been for the last several years. And you've got a pretty big battle going on between those Big Four. They're battling for market share. They're trying to steal MSPs away from one another. They're trying to cultivate new MSPs who are, coming out of the woodwork. And yes, for those of you who think that, we're in a consolidation, trend, from an M&A perspective, not from my vantage point, not with all these new MSPs coming up, right? I just spoke to a new MSP just a little while ago, and they're starting up all over, and so that is not a sign that we are reaching saturation point, or we're over. The supply is overshadowing the demand. No way. And we've talked about that in other episodes on this program as well. No. So when I say MSP platform, I mean any kind of point solution or series of cobbled together point solutions that are aimed at the MSP community, right? Typically starting with RMM and PSA together. So the MSP platforms that have kind of become the big four, right? They have gone through funding rounds. They have gone through quite a few acquisitions. Each of those companies has gone through quite a few acquisition activities in the past, right? To accumulate. Almost none of them developed this stuff internally. I mean, outside of the core technology that they all had, they all, to a T, went out and acquired new technologies that they bolted onto their platform, and they just continued to expand and expand and expand, and that's good, and that was very much needed. And it started, probably 11 plus years ago, if my math is right. Really started, I think, with the Kaseya reinvestment round, and that kind of kicked things off, if memory serves. But fast forward to today, 2021, and you've got a couple things going on here in the market that we all need to be aware of. Number one, MSPs are not happy with the Big Four. Now, if you work for the Big Four, I apologize that this may not be news that you want to hear, but the MSPs that we're hearing from are saying some things that are worth repeating and worth discussing in the channel, and that is they're seeing predatory, and if predatory is the wrong word, then they're seeing aggressive pricing behavior on the part of these vendors who are wanting to promote security technologies to the MSPs, which is not a bad thing, but it's the way in which it's being presented. It's the way in which it's being priced. It's the way in which they are saying, if you already are buying from us in this other area, you want to add this new security feature, for example, we're going to ask you to commit. We want a 1-year commitment. We want minimum financial commitments, right? So there's no pay-as-you-go pricing anymore. It's just fixed pricing. It's kind of a inflexible approach to these new, and they're mostly security features, right? Which kind of stands to reason, given everything that's going on. But these are new security technologies that the MSPs are looking at and wanting to onboard, but the vendor is saying, the way that you're going to go about doing it is very different than the way we have gone about, dealing with you as an MSP in the past. That's the change. That's what's changed. And it's not happening from any one vendor. It's happening from quite a few of them. And we've heard from a lot of MSPs who have said, hey, we're kind of seeing this as a trend. Are you hearing it from other people? And we're saying, yeah, you're not alone. We're hearing it from different MSPs. We're hearing it from different MSP platform companies. So it's something that's not an isolated occurrence, is my point. And I think that there's an explanation. We've kind of talked about this in previous MSP Zone podcasts before, about the financial pressure and the competitive pressure amongst the Big Four, and their grab for market share is driving a lot of what I would consider kind of predatory practices. They're behaving differently than they used to in the past because the stakes are just much higher. Well, the stakes got even higher today, and the trends that I'm talking about and what we're seeing. I'm just going to read from a press release that is indicative of what I would consider the next generation MSP platform companies. Now, I am not saying, for the record, I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with the technology of the Big Four, right? I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is there are new startup MSP platform companies that are coming out right now that are aiming their sights at the MSP market. They are getting funding. They are actively looking at what the Big Four have, and they're saying, this is what we are going to do better. And that's a very big, it's a big heads up for the Big Four to watch out. And for those of you out there who are looking at options and saying, look, I don't know if I want to put everything into a single vendor. ease of billing or not. I want best of breed, not a homogenous set of technologies from one single software author. Anyway, here's the story that just came out, I think, last week. And it is a company called SuperOps. I think they might be out of India, but I believe these guys are the old, guys remember the old Manage Engine from Zoho. I think these guys have some people from that. So they're people who have considerable MSP knowledge and expertise. And so SuperOps just got $3 million of seed funding from a couple of fairly well-known venture capital firms. So if you've never heard of SuperOps, you probably will. Now you have heard of them, but you're going to hear a lot more of them in the coming months and years. And so what's unique about them? Well, they're obviously fusing together both ticketing and RMM together. It's almost undoubtedly going to be cloud-based, right? So built in the cloud, and it's basing, from what I understand of this firm and some of the others that I'm about to talk about, they're basing a lot of the missing gaps, the missing areas in the existing big four technologies that MSPs would like to have. These firms are saying, well, that's a significant issue, and we're going to address that issue. Now, is this the only company that I'm aware of that is getting into the RMM and PSA space? Absolutely not. I am aware of one other company that is actually an MSP, has had the same problem, and is going out there to market, and they are developing their own set of tools. And I'm not sure where in the process they are with that yet. I'm not going to divulge who they are, but it's happening elsewhere. It's definitely happening elsewhere. So another thing, if you are of the opinion that the MSP community is shrinking, think again. There's no reason, there is no way companies like SuperOps are getting $3 million in funding. There's no way that these other companies are investing considerable time and resources and money into developing new RMM and PSA solutions for a market that is shrinking. It's not shrinking, it's expanding. And I'll post the press release link up on the show notes so you guys can read it for yourself. You can see what they're all about. But and there are others, right? I just gave you two examples, one named and the other one unnamed. But there are many other examples of different types of solutions that are coming out, being developed right now, that are taking aim squarely at the big four MSP platform companies and saying there is a need out there that is not being met. There's a way that we can interact with MSPs and gain market share that is clearly not being serviced by those big four companies. That is the takeaway from this. That's what I see as there's obvious disgruntlement in the MSP channel with the current set of tools that are available, and that may not mean that the companies are bad or the technologies they have are bad. It could just mean that there has started to be a little bit of a departure from those big four companies and what they did well and what they had as a core, right? I mean, each one of those companies, if you trace their roots back, they had really core solutions that they did well. And then it seems like almost like with every acquisition they did and bolted on a new technology, they became less and less and less focused on the thing that made them good in the first place. And that's not really unique to technology. That happens with anything in life. If you start to become more generalist, you're not going to become as good at the thing that made you famous in the first place. And that honestly could be a very simple explanation for what we're seeing here. But nevertheless, the the funding of companies like SuperOps, the other company that I talked about who's developing their own ticketing and RMM solution, these are not just, hey, we're gonna throw our hat in the ring because it's a nice thing to do. There's a market demand for something that does not exist, and there's a demand that is not being served by the Big Four community. And the Big Four probably need to hear about this. And the MSPs out there, you probably already know about this, but if you're not aware of it, you are now. And I think that, I'm not going to read through all the specifics or the quotes of the SuperOps press release, but you can kind of see where they see the competitive differentiator of where they're going to be going. They talk a little bit about on-premise tools versus cloud, and I think that's a legitimate point of debate, right? The Big Four all came from mostly, almost exclusively, on-premise solutions. They developed the cloud solution technologies later, versus these newer tools are almost exclusively, I think they are exclusively cloud-based. They're not on-premise. Now that maybe that's a differentiator in favor of the Big Four, right? Because there are certainly some of the bigger legacy MSPs and their customers they represent who actually do demand and would prefer on-premise because of security and privacy reasons. A fair point, and something that should not be overlooked. But the larger point is this: there's a lot of activity going on in the marketplace, especially around the tools being sold to MSPs. And we're, at least from my seat, looking at continued activity in the market, continued investment in the market. That's the key thing. It's not just that these are companies that are out there saying, hey, I want to be an RMM or a ticketing platform. Getting money is a big thing, because getting money means you convinced somebody that there's a market demand for what you have built, and it's going to be a considerable return on investment. That should say a lot, not only to the technology vendors selling to MSPs, it should say a lot to you as MSPs. It's a huge vote of confidence for the managed services global profession. Anyway, those are my thoughts on it. Again, I'll leave the links to some of these articles in the show notes. Take a look at them. Take a look at these companies. Tell me what you think of them. Be happy to hear your thoughts. Shoot us an email at mspzone@mspalliance.com to share your thoughts or comments on the program. Leave your comments on the web or wherever you listen to MSP Zone. And this is Charles Weaver. Until next time.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, please give us a like. Make sure you are subscribed to the podcast so you will get notified when future episodes are released. We will see you next time in the MSP Zone.